Nobody clapped when the human delegation walked in. The Concorde Ring orbital station was built to impress. It stretched across low orbit like a silver crown, filled with ambassadors and military officials from over 40 spacefaring species. Every cycle, the Galactic Security Summit brought them together to show off weapons, negotiate defense treaties, and decide who mattered in the galaxy. This cycle, for the first time ever, humans have been invited. Lieutenant Ava Reese walked through the exhibition hall with her back straight and her expression calm. She led a team of 4 soldiers, all dressed in plain gray uniforms that looked boring next to the glowing armor and energy-laced suits of the other species. Behind them, Sergeant Rowe pushed a simple metal cart loaded with black weapon cases. The exhibition floor was enormous. Rows of display booths stretched in every direction, each one showcasing the finest military technology a species had to offer. The Drothi, tall insectoid beings with shimmering exoskeletons, had the largest booth. Their display featured a crystalline lance mounted on a pedestal that hummed with visible energy. Crowds gathered around it, murmuring in admiration. The Paliki, a squid-like aquatic species encased in water-filled suits, demonstrated a gravity implosion device on a small screen, collapsing a simulated asteroid into dust. The Brenni, who resembled large upright wolves, displayed sleek magnetic accelerators that looked like pieces of art. And then there was the human booth. Ava set up their display on a small table near the back wall. She laid out a standard-issue assault rifle, a heavy machine gun, a long-range sniper system, and 2 sidearms. All of them were metal. All of them used bullets. None of them glowed. The first alien to stop by was a Drothi officer. He looked down at the weapons with his wide compound eyes, tilted his triangular head, and made a clicking noise that the translator rendered as laughter. He picked up the rifle, turned it over in his clawed hands, and asked if it was a historical artifact. Ava told him it was standard military equipment. The officer clicked again and walked away. Word spread fast. Within an hour, the human booth had become the joke of the exhibition. Groups of delegates wandered over just to look and laugh. A Paliki ambassador squeezed past in his water suit and told his assistant that humans still relied on combustion and hope. 2 Drothi engineers spent several minutes examining the sniper rifle and loudly debating whether it belonged in a museum or a waste bin. Rowe stood next to Ava with his jaw tight and his hand behind his back. He was a stocky man with a shaved head and thick arms, the kind of soldier who solved problems directly. Every joke made his neck redder. "Permission to speak freely," he said through his teeth. "Denied," Ava replied without looking at him. "They are laughing at us. I can hear them. So let me say something." Ava turned to face him. She was shorter than Rowe by a full head, but something in her eyes made him stand straighter. "Our chance will come," she said quietly. "Not today." The exhibition continued. Species after species presented weapons that bent light, crushed matter, disrupted nervous systems, or burned through starship holes from a distance. Every presentation earned applause. The humans stood at their little table and watched. Late in the day, the summit moderator took the central stage. His name was Dole, a Fenari, which meant he was small, soft-furred, and spoke in a gentle voice that carried surprising authority. He announced that the following day would feature live-fire demonstrations in the station's combat arena. Each species would showcase their weapons against standardized armored test targets. Scores would be recorded. Rankings would be published. Dole glanced toward the human booth as he said this, and for a brief moment, Ava thought she saw something like pity in his round, dark eyes. After the announcement, the exhibition hall began to empty. Ava waited until most delegates had left, then pulled Rowe aside. "I need you to contact the orbital armory," she said. Rowe raised an eyebrow. "What are we requesting?" "The GAU-19. Full turret mount. 10,000 rounds of armor piercing." Rowe stared at her for a moment. Then a slow grin spread across his face. "That is a lot of gun for a polite demonstration." "They wanted to see what we brought," Ava said. "Tomorrow, we show them." That evening, as the alien delegation celebrated and traded compliments in the station's luxurious common halls, the human team sat in their small assigned quarters eating ration packs. Nobody had invited them to dinner. Nobody had offered alliance talks. In the ranking displays that floated through the station's corridors, humanity was listed at the bottom, flagged with a note that read, Pre-Energy Kinetic Civilization. Rowe checked his communicator. The cargo shuttle from Earth's orbital armory was on approach. Estimated arrival. 4 hours. Ava sat on her bunk and cleaned the assault rifle that an alien had laughed at earlier that day. She worked in silence, running a cloth along the barrel with the patience of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. Outside their window, the stars stretched in every direction, cold and endless. Somewhere out there, 40 species thought humans were a joke. Why tomorrow evening, none of them would be laughing. The arena smelled like ozone and burnt metal before a single shot had been fired at. IT was a massive pressurized dome built into the lower ring of the Concorde Ring Station, designed specifically for weapons testing. Rows of observation galleries rose on all sides, filled with hundreds of alien delegates leaning forward in their seats. Holographic displays floated above the firing lanes, ready to project weapon stats, penetration depth, destruction efficiency, and speed ratings for every species that took the floor. High Commander Sirith of the Drothi stood at the center of the arena, tall and gleaming under the bright lights. His exoskeleton caught the glow like polished armor. He held the Resonance Lance in both clawed hands, a weapon so elegant it looked like it had been sculpted rather than built. Crystalline rods spiraled around a core of compressed energy, and when he raised it to firing position, the entire weapon hummed with a sound that vibrated through the floor. He fired. A focused beam of oscillating energy shot across the arena and struck the first armored test block. The beam cut through it like a blade through water, leaving a perfectly straight line of glowing edges. No miss, no debris, just clean, surgical destruction. The holographic stats appeared instantly. Precision, 98%. Penetration depth, maximum. Residual damage, 0. The crowd erupted in applause. Sirith lowered the lance, turned to the galleries, and gave a slow bow. His compound eyes swept the room with obvious pride. The Paliki went next. Their gravity implosion device sat on a tripod, a dark sphere surrounded by rotating rings. When activated, it targeted the second test block and collapsed it inward. The armored block crumpled like paper being squeezed in a fist, shrinking to the size of a small ball. Impressive, though the charge cycle took nearly 12 seconds. The stats were strong, but slower. The crowd offered respectful acknowledgement one by one. Other species took their turns. The Brenny fired their magnetic accelerator, sending a metal slug at tremendous speed through a test block, punching a clean hole and embedding itself in the backstop wall. A reptilian species called the Tauric demonstrated a plasma projector that melted its target into a glowing puddle. A small delegation of insect-like Vrathi used a sonic disruptor that cracked their target into jagged pieces from the inside out. Every weapon was beautiful. Every weapon used energy in some advanced form. Every demonstration earned applause and murmurs of approval. Then the moderator's voice echoed through the arena. Final demonstration. Species, human. Ava walked onto the arena floor carrying the standard assault rifle. She wore no special armor, no glowing suit, no energy shield. Just her gray uniform and a pair of ear protectors hanging around her neck. Behind her, Rose stood near the entry tunnel, arms folded. The arena went quiet, but it was not the quiet of anticipation. It was the quiet of disappointment. Several delegates actually sighed. A few began whispering. Sirith, still standing near the edge of the firing zone, shook his triangular head and said something to his aide that made the aide click with laughter. Ava loaded the rifle. She pulled back the charging handle, raised the weapon, and aimed at the first test block. She fired 3 controlled bursts. The rounds punched through the armored block with sharp cracking sounds that echoed through the dome. 3 rough holes appeared in the surface. Fragments of material chipped off the edges. The holographic stats flickered into view. Penetration, adequate. Precision, good. Destruction efficiency, moderate point polite, scatter d'applause. The kind given out of obligation rather than respect. Cirrus spoke loudly enough for the translator systems to pick up. Adorable, he said. Laughter rippled through the galleries. Ava lowered the rifle. She did not respond. She did not look up at the galleries. She simply turned, walked back toward Ro, and handed him the weapon. Then she faced the moderator's booth and spoke clearly into the arena's audio system. We would like to register a second demonstration piece for the extended trials tomorrow. Dole, the Fenari moderator, looked down from his booth with his round eyes blinking. He checked his display, confirmed the rules allowed it, and nodded. Granted, he said, his voice carrying a faint note of sympathy. Ava thanked him and walked off the arena floor without another word. The crowd barely noticed her leave. They were already replaying the Drothy demonstration on the holographic screens, discussing Siritha's precision scores and debating whether the Paliki gravity device could be scaled up for ship-to-ship combat. Nobody talked about the human rifle. It was already forgotten. Back in the human quarters, the cargo shuttle had arrived and docked at their bay. Ro led Ava to the storage area where the crate sat under yellow loading lights. It was large, heavy, and stamped with Earth military markings. Ro entered the unlock code. The crate's front panel hissed and swung open. Inside, mounted on a portable turret platform, sat the GU-19. 3 thick black barrels, a heavy receiver housing, a belt feed system loaded with a long, gleaming chain of brass-colored armor-piercing rounds. It was not elegant. It was not beautiful. It looked like something built to end arguments permanently. Ro ran his hand along the barrels and looked at Ava. Think they will laugh at this? Ava studied the weapon for a long moment. Once, she said. They will laugh once. The message arrived on Ava's communicator at 3 in the morning station time. That IT was from Dole, the Fenari moderator, and it was marked private. He wanted to meet. No aides, no translators, no records. Just a conversation. Ava pulled on her boots and walked through the quiet corridors of the station to a small observation lounge near the outer ring. Dole was already there, sitting on a bench far too large for his small body. His fur was a soft gray-brown, and his dark round eyes reflected the starlight coming through the curved window. He looked tired, which was unusual for a Fenari. They were known for their calm. "Thank you for coming," he said as Ava sat down across from him. "You did not call me here to talk about the weather," Ava replied. Dole folded his small hands in his lap. High Commander Sirith has submitted a formal motion to the Galactic Defense Council. He wants humanity classified as a pre-modern military civilization. Ava's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened on her knee. What does that mean exactly? It means you lose your voting rights. You lose the ability to conduct independent military operations in shared space. You become a protectorate dependent on other species for defense. Essentially, you become a child species under galactic supervision. The words hung in the air between them. Outside the window, a supply frigate drifted past, its running lights blinking in the dark. How much support does he have? Ava asked. Dole hesitated. Enough. After yesterday's demonstration, many species see your weapons as proof that humans are still in an early stage of development. The Paliki and 3 other delegations have already signaled support. Several neutral species are leaning the same way. They are not hostile toward you, Lieutenant. They simply believe the evidence. The evidence being that our guns use bullets instead of beams. Yes. Ava leaned back and looked at the stars. She had expected resistance. She had expected arrogance. She had not expected them to move this fast. What would change their minds? She asked. Dole was quiet for a moment. The summit has always respected capability. Raw, demonstrated capability. If your species can prove genuine combat effectiveness in tomorrow's extended trials, the motion loses its foundation. Delegates will not vote to restrict a species that has shown it can fight. He paused. But if you fail again, the vote will pass, and there will be nothing I can do. Ava studied the small alien's face. Why are you telling me this? You are supposed to be neutral. Dole looked down at his hands. I am neutral, but I have read your species' history, Lieutenant. All of it. Every war, every treaty, every act of destruction, and every act of rebuilding. I do not think you are primitive. I think the others have made a mistake, and I would rather not see that mistake become permanent. He stood, gave her a small nod, and walked out of the lounge without another word. Ava sat alone for a long time, watching the stars turn. Meanwhile, in a recreation bay on the other side of the station, Ro had found company. A group of Brinny soldiers had invited him to their table after recognizing him from the human booth. The Brinny were canine in appearance, with thick fur, broad shoulders, and sharp amber eyes. They were considered mid-tier in the galactic military ranking, respected but not feared. Their squad leader was a female named Hassa. She was smaller than the other Brinny, but carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that came from experience. She slid a cup of alien drink across the table to Ro, who sniffed it, shrugged, and drank. "Your weapon today?" Hassa said, watching him with those amber eyes. It was not impressive by the standards here. "Nope," Ro agreed. "But I have read reports about your world. Earth. It is classified as a high-danger environment. Extreme gravity by galactic average. Predators on every continent. Tectonic instability. Your species has been at war with itself for most of its recorded history." Ro took another drink. "That is accurate." Hassa leaned forward. "Then why did you bring such a small weapon?" Ro grinned. It was the kind of grin that showed too many teeth. "Because we were being polite." Hassa's ears flicked forward. "And tomorrow," Ro said, setting down the cup, "we stop being polite." Hassa held his gaze for a long moment. Then she leaned back and let out a low rumbling sound that Ro's translator identified as deep satisfaction. "I will watch closely," she said. Ro returned to the human quarters an hour later and found Ava sitting on a crate in the storage bay, staring at the GU-19. She told him everything Dole had said. The motion, the vote, the stakes. Ro listened without interrupting. When she finished, he cracked his knuckles and looked at the weapon. "So tomorrow is not just a demonstration," he said. "No, avariplaith. Tomorrow is everything." "Good." Ro patted the side of the turret like a man greeting an old friend. "Because this thing does not know how to lose." Across the station, in a luxurious Drothy suite, Sirith was rehearsing a speech. It was elegant and condescending, filled with phrases about merciful guidance and the natural hierarchy of civilizations. He practiced the part where he would recommend human weapons be placed in a galactic museum, and his aides clicked in approval. He was very confident he should not have been. Every seat in the arena was full before the lights even came on. The extended trials were the highlight of every summit, and this cycle was no different. Delegations packed the observation gallery shoulder to shoulder, tentacle to tentacle, wing to wing. Holographic screens hung in the air above the firing lanes, ready to display real-time stats. The air buzzed with conversation in 100 different languages, all of it being fed through translator systems that hummed like background music. The format today was different from the day before. Each species would face a gauntlet. 7 armored targets arranged at varying distances, each one tougher than the last. The scoring was based on 3 things: destruction efficiency, speed, and sustained firepower. A species needed to destroy as many targets as fast as possible, without stopping. The Drothy went first. Cirrus stepped onto the firing lane with his resonance lance held high. The weapon sang as it powered up, a beautiful rising tone that filled the arena. He fired in smooth, measured bursts, each beam slicing through a target with surgical precision. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 targets fell in sequence, each one cut apart cleanly. The 7th, the heaviest armored block, took 2 shots, but eventually split down the middle. Time, 41 seconds. Destruction efficiency, 96%, the crowd roared. Sirith raised the lance above his head and turned in a slow circle, soaking in the applause. His exoskeleton gleamed under the arena lights like polished bronze. The Paliki went next. Their gravity device crushed 3 targets beautifully, but stalled on the 4th during its long charge cycle. Time ran out before they could finish. The Brenny performed well with their magnetic accelerator, punching through 5 targets with impressive accuracy. Hassa fired the weapon herself, and Ro noticed she glanced toward the human tunnel before stepping off the lane. Other species followed. The Toric melted 4 targets with plasma. The Vrathi cracked 5 with sonic disruption. Each performance earned its share of applause, and the rankings updated on the holographic boards in real time. The Drothi sat comfortably at the top. Then the moderator's voice came through the speakers, calm and clear. Final demonstration. Species human. The arena did not go quiet this time. It went dismissive. Delegates began talking among themselves. A few reached for their drinks. Sirith leaned back in his observation seat and said something to his aide that made them both click with amusement. Ava walked onto the firing lane alone. She carried the same standard rifle from the day before. She loaded it, raised it, and fired controlled bursts of the first 3 targets. The rounds punched through them with sharp, cracking sounds. Holes appeared, material fragmented. The stats displayed on the holograms were decent. Not spectacular, not embarrassing, just decent, scattered thin applause. A few delegates nodded politely. Most had already looked away. Ava lowered the rifle and stepped to the side of the lane. Then Ro walked out of the tunnel. He was pushing the turret platform, and on top of it sat the GU-19. 3 thick black barrels pointed forward. A long belt of gleaming brass-colored ammunition fed from a heavy box into the receiver. The weapon was mounted low and solid on the platform, and Ro locked the wheels into position at the firing line with a loud clank that echoed through the suddenly quiet arena. Every head turned. The aliens had never seen anything like it. It was ugly. It was heavy. It had no glow, no hum, no elegant design. It looked like raw, unfiltered aggression shaped into metal. Sirith leaned forward in his seat. His compound eyes narrowed. Ro positioned himself behind the weapon, gripped the handles, and looked at Ava. Ava put on her ear protectors. Then she raised one hand and dropped it. Ro pulled the trigger. The GU-19 came alive at 1,300 rounds per minute. The sound was not a bang. It was a roar. A deep, continuous, thundering roar that hit every wall of the arena and bounced back like a living thing. The muzzle flash lit up the firing lane in a strobing blaze of white and orange. The first target did not just break. It came apart. Hundreds of armor-piercing rounds struck it in less than 2 seconds, and the armored block exploded into fragments that scattered across the floor like shrapnel. The second target shattered. The third was torn into twisted ribbons of composite material. Ro swept the barrels in a steady arc, the belt feeding rounds in a blur of brass, and the fourth and fifth targets disintegrated under the continuous stream of fire. The sixth target, the second heaviest, lasted 1.5 seconds before it crumbled into dust. The seventh, the block that had taken Sirith 2 careful shots from an energy lance, was hit by a concentrated burst that lasted 3 seconds. It did not crack. It did not split. It ceased to exist. Pieces of it embedded themselves in the arena's backstop wall. Ro released the trigger. The silence that followed was absolute. No applause. No whispers. No clicking. Nothing. Every being in that arena sat frozen, staring at the empty space where 7 armored targets had been standing moments ago. Smoke drifted across the firing lane. Spent brass casings covered the floor in a golden carpet. The holographic stats flickered, recalculated, and displayed the results. Destruction efficiency, 100%. Time, 8.3 seconds. Sustained fire capability, extreme. Ava stepped forward to the arena microphone. She looked up at the silent galleries and spoke in a voice that carried no anger, no arrogance, and no apology. "This is what we call a light support weapon," she said. "We have bigger ones." Nobody laughed. Sirith found Ava in a corridor less than an hour after the demonstration ended. He came fast, his long insectoid legs clicking against the station floor with sharp, angry taps. 2 aides trailed behind him, struggling to keep up. Ava was walking back toward the human quarters with Ro when the Drothi commander stepped directly into their path and blocked the corridor with his full height. He was trembling. Not with fear, with fury. "How?" he demanded. His translator turned the clicking sounds of his language into a flat, cold voice. "How does a species that still burns chemicals inside metal tubes produce that kind of destruction?" Ava stopped and looked up at him. Sirith was nearly twice her height. His compound eyes glittered under the corridor lights. His mandibles twitched in quick, agitated movements. "It is not complicated," Ava said calmly. "Earth is a violent world. We have been fighting wars with projectile weapons for over 1,000 years. Each war taught us something. Each generation made the weapons faster, more accurate, and more destructive. While your species moved to energy weapons early in your development, we kept perfecting the art of throwing metal at very high speed in very large quantities." Siritha's mandibles snapped shut. "That weapon you use today, what is it mounted on?" "Light vehicles, sometimes helicopters. And your larger weapons?" "Our aircraft carry rotary cannons 10 times more powerful. Our naval ships have guns that fire explosive shells over 30 kilometers. Our ground forces have weapons that can level a building in seconds." Ava paused. "Would you like me to continue?" Sirith stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away without another word. His aides hurried after him. Ro watched them go and let out a breath. "That went well. That was the easy part," Ava said. "He's going to try something political now." She was right. Within hours, Sirith called an emergency session of the Defense Council. The galleries filled again, though the mood was different now. The laughter was gone. In its place was a tense, uncertain silence. Species that had ignored humans yesterday were now watching them carefully. Sirith stood at the central podium and made his argument with practiced precision. He did not deny the power of human weapons. Instead, he used it against them. He called humans dangerously violent. He cited Earth's history of world wars, nuclear weapons development, and centuries of internal conflict. He argued that giving full military autonomy to a species with such a history was reckless and irresponsible. "They are effective, yes," Sirith said, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. "But effectiveness without wisdom is a threat to every civilization in this galaxy. We must restrict them for the safety of all." Several delegates nodded. The argument was clever. It turned humanity's strength into a reason for containment. Then Dole, the Fenari moderator, opened the floor for responses. Hassa stood first. The Brenny squad leader walked to the podium with heavy, deliberate steps. Her amber eyes swept the chamber. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "I have studied humanity," she said. "Their history is violent, yes. But I also noticed something that High Commander Sirith left out of his speech. In every war humans have fought, they also rebuilt afterward. They created laws to prevent the same wars from happening again. They formed alliances with former enemies. They turned battlefields into memorials." She looked directly at Sirith. "That is not the behavior of a mindless, violent species. That is the behavior of a species that learns." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Hassa continued. "Yesterday, humans were mocked by every delegation in the station. They were insulted, dismissed, and laughed at openly. And what did they do? They waited. They followed the rules. They asked for a fair chance, and they demonstrated their capability without threatening anyone." She paused. "That is restraint. And restraint combined with power is exactly what this council should want at its table." More murmurs. Louder now. Then a delegate from the back of the chamber stood. He was Orami, a small, frail-looking being with pale blue skin and thin limbs. The Orami were one of the weakest species in the galaxy, physically and militarily. They survived because stronger species chose to protect them, and they lived in constant fear that one day the protection would stop. The Orami delegate looked at Ava, who was seated in the human section with Ro beside her. "Lieutenant," he said, his soft voice amplified by the chamber's systems, "I have one question. If our world were attacked, would your people fight for us?" The chamber went still. Ava stood. She did not hesitate. She did not calculate. She answered the way a soldier answers when the question is about protecting someone who cannot protect themselves. "Yes," she said. The word landed like the last round from a weapon that had already won. The Orami delegates sat down. Around the chamber, delegates looked at each other. The mood shifted visibly, like a tide changing direction. Dole called the vote on Sirith's motion to classify humanity as a pre-modern civilization. The motion failed. 31 species voted against it. 6 voted in favor. 3 abstained. Humanity retained full membership, full voting rights, and full military autonomy. Cirith stood frozen at his seat as the results were displayed. His mandibles hung slightly open. His aides whispered urgently in his ear, but he did not respond. He stared at the holographic numbers as if he could not understand what they meant. Then he gathered his things and left the chamber in silence. Nobody watched him go. They were all looking at the humans. Rain was falling on the memorial when Ava arrived. It had been 3 weeks since the summit. 3 weeks since a roaring burst of gunfire had turned an arena full of laughter into silence. 3 weeks since a single word, yes, had changed humanity's place in the galaxy. Ava stood in front of the Veterans Memorial outside the Unified Defense Corps headquarters in Geneva. It was a simple wall of dark stone engraved with the names of soldiers who had given their lives in conflicts stretching back centuries. The rain ran down the letters in thin streams, making them shine. She had come straight from her debriefing. General Hollins, her commanding officer, had congratulated her with a firm handshake and a warning. "You gave them a show they will never forget," he had said, leaning back in his chair. "But now they are watching. Every species in that galaxy is going to be paying attention to what we do next. Being respected is harder than being underestimated, Reese. Do not let us down." Ava had nodded and said nothing. She was good at that. Now she stood in the rain and thought about the weapons that had earned Earth its seat at the galactic table. The GU-19, the rifles, the sidearms, all of them were built to kill. All of them were perfected over centuries of humans killing other humans. Every innovation, every improvement, every increase in rate of fire or penetration depth had been driven by one human's need to destroy another human more efficiently. That was the truth nobody at the summit had said out loud. The aliens were impressed by the weapon. They did not know, or did not want to think about, the fact that every piece of it had been designed for a war between brothers. Ava looked at the names on the wall. She did not know any of them personally, but she knew the kind of people they were. Soldiers who had picked up those weapons, carried them across oceans and deserts and frozen mountains, and pointed them at enemies who looked exactly like themselves. Soldiers who had built the legacy that she had just demonstrated to a galaxy full of strangers. She thought about the Ormy delegate, his thin body, his soft voice, the fear in his pale blue eyes when he asked his question. "If our world were attacked, would your people fight for us?" She had said yes without thinking. It was not a political answer. It was not a calculated move. It was the truth. Humans would fight. They always had. For land, for resources, for pride, for revenge, and sometimes for people who could not fight for themselves. That was the part that mattered. Not the guns, not the bullets, not the rate of fire. The willingness to stand in front of someone smaller and say, "Not today." Her communicator buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw Rose's name on the screen. "Reese," she answered. "We just got the briefing," Rose said. His voice had the clipped energy of a man who had already started packing. "First advisory mission is approved. An Ormy colony on the border of contested space. Designation Rilla 3. They have been reporting raider activity for weeks. Small ships, hit-and-run attacks. The colony has no military capability. When do we deploy? 72 hours. General Hollins wants a 12-person rapid response team. Light vehicles, portable weapon systems, and enough ammunition to hold a position for 30 days. Roe paused. "He wants you to lead it." Ava looked at the memorial wall one more time. The rain was letting up. Thin sunlight broke through the clouds and caught the wet stone, making the carved names glow. "Tell him I will be there," she said. She ended the call and walked toward the base. Inside the armory, soldiers were already preparing. Crates of ammunition were being loaded onto transport pallets. Rifles were being checked and cleaned. Communication equipment was being tested. A team of engineers was mounting a GU-19 onto the roof of a light tactical vehicle, bolting it into place with practiced efficiency. Rome met her at the door. He was grinning, which meant he was happy, and carrying a rifle, which meant he was ready. "Funny thing," he said as they walked through the armory together. 2 weeks ago, nobody in the galaxy knew what a bullet was. Now we have got 3 species requesting joint training programs and 5 more asking to buy ammunition. The Brenny, first in line, has to send a formal proposal yesterday. Joint exercises, shared tactics, cross-species combat drills. She called it an unprecedented opportunity for mutual advancement. Rose shrugged. I think she just wants to fire the GAU-19. Ava almost smiled. They reached the loading bay where the rapid response shuttle was being prepped. It was a rugged, no-nonsense transport built for fast deployment. Not elegant, not beautiful, just effective, like everything humans built for war. Ava climbed aboard and looked out through the open bay door. The sun had fully broken through now, lighting up the tarmac and the green hills beyond the base. Somewhere far away, on a small colony called Rilla 3, an Ormy family was looking up at the sky and wondering if help would come to IT would point 12 hours later. The shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere and climbed into the darkness of space. Inside, 12 soldiers sat in their seats with their weapons secure and their faces calm. They were heading toward a species they had never met, to fight an enemy they had never seen, on a world they had never visited, and they did not hesitate, because that was the thing about humans. They did not just build weapons. They carried them to places where someone needed protection.